Hi everybody, it's Allison Derwent coming to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You can see my shadow here. It's just that time of day where the lighting is not quite as direct, but that's okay. I think these colors that I'm showing you are so vibrant that you don't really need the bright lights to see how gorgeous these hues are. So this is kind of like a part 2 of a video that I had just posted about the color palette and how I like to record my color palettes for collections, for classes that I have coming up in an art journal, and just kind of keep it in my memory bank as almost like for future inspiration. Sometimes when I look back on paintings I've created, I think, you know, how did I get that really beautiful light blue? Which paint was that? This little pop of pink, did I use a paint pen, which I think I probably did, or did I use like a luminous whole bean paint, which is what that first video was. I shared kind of how I smushed down paints, acrylic paints, onto onto this particular fluid mixed media journal. This is by Canson. So Canson Fluid Mixed Media, this is a great size to work in. It's 7 by 10 inches, 154 pounds, or 250 grams. This paper is very smooth. It's not the best for watercolor media, but I love to use it for everything from collage to getting this reticulated pattern with slightly heavier body paints. Sometimes I use fluid acrylics, but I think it's just wonderful for the exercise that I'm going to be doing with you all right now as a part 2. So part 1, I was just sharing a little bit of a backstory, how when I had created my Breaking Cabin Fever collection last winter, during our super cold winter here in Calgary, I had recorded by swatching, basically smushing paint between two smooth pieces of paper, two smooth surfaces, and then I would label what the colors were. So I almost could keep like a history, just a little diary of what I was using. So this next spread that you see here are all of the gorgeous warmer colors, so the reds, oranges, yellows that I had used in the background of these 4-inch square mini paintings I had done on canvas. So this collection was called my Electric Blue Sky Mini Collection, which was primarily acrylic paint with a little bit of collage and dried wildflowers from my parents' garden, and also from walks when my son and I were out chasing butterflies and looking for snakes. We were looking for grass snakes. He tells me that Alberta has, I think, maybe just one venomous snake, oh gosh, what's it called? Anyway, I'm not into snakes or reptiles at all myself, but he was really keen on going out and seeing if we could find, we could hear hissing out in the bushes. We have this beautiful bushy area just outside our home, and we could hear, I think it was grasshoppers and crickets making that really beautiful kind of hissing noise, and so we pretended that we were finding the Alberta snakes. Is it the garter snake? Oh, it's gonna bug me now. He's been teaching me. He'd be very disappointed if he watches this video and I can't remember the most common snake here in Alberta. But anyway, we don't fortunately get many venomous creatures like Australia does, and I'm sidetracking, so I'm going to go back to these gorgeous, vibrant, warmish colors, and today's video is going to be going back to the green colors that I had used as my underpainting in this collection. So as I prepare for my upcoming class, which I'm doing locally, I'll have 12 students doing it in person over 3 hours. So I like to do some prep, and this is still wet, so I'm not going to actually close entirely my page, but I'm just going to kind of leave it open slightly. Maybe I'll use my little this Deco Earth paint bottle just to hold it open. And then what we're going to do is work on the beautiful greens, and we're going to use the blank smooth cards that I was using in the last video. You can use anything, just cut your own pieces of paper. 140 pound and up paper is good. 98 pounds is not too bad. It's a little bit thin. You can just grab even paper like from your local dollar store. Maybe you have a pad of paper, you know, laying around your house where it's just slightly thick for holding acrylic paint. So this is just one I had bought at the Dollarama here in Canada, although it says Walmart. Maybe it was from Walmart. I liked the idea of the little index cards. And so, but I'm going to show you how I like to kind of swatch out my colors, build a color palette for a collection, and have it to go back to refer to. And so let's start with, this is Brilliant Yellow Green by Liquetex Basics. Really love this green. I'm just gonna get a dollop of that, and you can see some of that beautiful light green in here, that yellowish green. Just pops of that green coming out. Super pretty. I'm also going to put down a couple other greens that I like. One of them is, I believe it was this artist Loft, Michael's in-house brand, the Turquoise. Right in there, I think it was mixed with this green. So we'll get that one down. So side by side, I'm going to be smushing paint before it dries. So we have the Brilliant Yellow Green by Liquetex Basics, and then we have the artist Loft, Michael's in-house brand, Turquoise acrylic paints. And then the other one I've really been loving more as a neutral is this Green Gray by Liquetex Basics. Love Happy Accents. And then, this is Blue Gray. And then I'm just gonna take my swatch card, which I can later use for collage with my Yes paste, which is a great kind of matte medium glue type substance. Isn't that leaf so beautiful? Just by smushing these smooth pieces of paper with paint. So I'm gonna set that aside before I get it on me. I'm wearing my apron this time. And that is a Brilliant Turquoise by artist Loft. And these two are just meant to be smushed sort of side by side. So the Green Gray and the Blue Gray by Liquetex Basics. Awesome neutrals. Speaking of insects, that almost looks like you could have like super skinny legs. That's what I'm seeing in that one right now. Well, I guess we were talking about reptiles, but anyway. Okay, now I wanted to share the kind of main color that I had used to carve out my underpainting, and it's that light phthalo blue. It's a gorgeous light sky blue by Golden, and this is what it looks like. It's more of an investment. This one was $35, although I have to say a little goes a long way, and you can even get a more affordable white paint. And you can thin it out, mix it. And because, you know, if you're working on a small painting like I was, you don't need a lot. I'll get the lid on so it doesn't dry out. So our main color was this beautiful blue, and I like to use more of a neutral but a pretty color, just so that color that is on the majority of the canvas highlights the beautiful brights. And this was just a really great color. The other color I like to use is, let's just see if I have it handy. It's almost like, where is it? Okay, I'm not seeing it. I'll share that with you maybe in another video. It's called Parchment, which is sort of like a Titan buff, like an off-white, creamy white. That's a really great neutral. Another one is the Titan Green Pale, which is very much something you could probably make if you had purchased this Green Gray by Liquetex Basics and added white to it. You could probably create a gorgeous neutral that would look really nice. Kind of like this one here. This was probably a little bit of Parchment, which I think was maybe an Artist Loft color. It's probably right in front of me, I'm just not seeing it. And the Titan Green Pale. But you can just see when you carve out around those brights, those neons, it really makes the colors stand out more. And so we have that phthalo blue. And as far as other greens, I mean, you can just use whatever greens you have laying around. This is a really pretty phthalo green as well. It's a lot of these, just like me, they're under pressure, I guess, right now, aren't they? Use tubes under a little bit of pressure. Just kidding, I'm not under pressure. I really like doing videos. Okay, so that phthalo green, we may as well share this card. Actually, no, I'm not going to, because I have a plan. I'm gonna just put this one down, this Artist Loft phthalo green. Very beautiful the way the pigment settled in the middle there. With winter coming, I'm really craving greens. We've had one fairly big snowfall, but it didn't last very long here. Why did I show you that? I'm not sure. What other colors? Cerulean Blue by Artist Loft is another really pretty blue. Very similar, actually. Less turquoise than that turquoise that we had used. I suppose if I cleaned my lids properly and maybe kind of shook the paint down before opening it, I would be able to get less pressure building up. I should just do that now with this one. And I'm just going to put that blue next to this blue so I can see how close they are. And then we're going to do we have any other greens? Let's see. I was trying to go through some paints I've had forever to use up. And this is Art Studio. I don't even know if they sell Art Studio. This is so old, this paint. No idea where it came from. I've probably had it since I was a young adolescent. But great way to use up paint by just swatching colors, playing around, seeing what you like. Actually, that's a gorgeous color. And considering it's old, it's very pigmented, it's quite beautiful. So that is it for the swatching and having sort of collage paper that we can use if we want, cutting these out. I'm gonna wait for these to dry and then I'm gonna write the names and the numbers on each with a permanent pen. And the possibilities are endless for what we can do with these. They just really make me happy. The process is quite meditative. And if you saw my first video where we were swatching out these gorgeous brights, I was saying it's such a good way to use up paints that you have laying around and just kind of using it as almost like a meditative process, just getting the color onto a piece of paper that you might have and, you know, seeing how heavily weighted that paper is, how much paint can you use to get some of that reticulated, that elevated line work, that venulated pattern. Just playing around and maybe putting the colors side by side, seeing what you like. I'm just gonna set this down where it won't smudge. Just seeing what else I can share with you all today. I have an idea. Just gonna create some space. So what I want to share with you is how to work a little bit quickly and how to work on paper and create these beautiful backgrounds. So you can kind of practice without having to practice on a canvas or a wood panel. And you can take one full sheet of paper and just use up paint, smush it on, get that texture, kind of get out of your head, leave it out to dry for, I mean, honestly, if you could leave it out for a couple weeks, that's amazing. I love texture in my work, so I would leave this out quite long before I folded it back up. But I would recommend, if you're like me, if you've been painting for a while, if you have any paintings on paper. I know for a little while I got into wanting to paint large, and when I went a little bit like 18 by 24, it was a bit too large for my styles at the time. And I know, I have them actually underneath me here. So grab an old painting on paper if you have it. I mean, this is a practice piece where I was just playing with acrylic inks. I was working on, at the time I did commissions. I don't do commissions, but I was just testing out colors and putting down fluid media and really playing around. Believe it or not, the commission was for 2 buffalo paintings, which are not, it was a really, really hard commission, but for a very good, my good friend Ryan from junior high and high school. And I was grateful for him that he trusted me in making him 2 acrylic buffalo paintings. But anyway, so if you have paper, this is good quality, 140-pound paper. Paper can hold a lot of acrylic paint, also fluid paint. And obviously I've built up this beautiful layer, and there's not a ton of texture, but there's a lot of color, and it gives me a lot to work with. So I could choose this or this one. I think I might be harder on your eyes if I worked on the first one. So what I would do is just pull out a sheet of paper, a large piece if you have one, something that may otherwise not be made into a final painting, and use it as your underpainting. And what I like to do is, I'm going to teach in my class, you get a 3/4 inch brush, and that creates a really good size mark for something like these small canvases. This is an example of a torn piece of paper, and you can just see the size of the brush was approximately 3/4 inch. So this is the only brush I would recommend using. I'm gonna get my brush wet. I have some dirty paint water over there, but that doesn't matter. And I'm just gonna start by I'd say it would be good to start with like warmer colors. So, you know, the pinks, oranges, yellows. Just gonna see, I have those over here. You could also start with the greenery. It's really basically using up paper that you might have, paint that you might have that you can later cut up and mount to a wood panel or frame as a little work on paper. So the thing that brought me to doing these was just letting go, mark making on paper. So let's just start with actually this yellow, brilliant yellow green from Liquetex Basics. I don't use a palette. I just get a big dollop and I make textured marks all around the page. And one thing, actually something that I'd forgotten, is I fold the paper in half and then I fold it in half again to create at least 6 to up to 12 to 18 little boxes where I folded it, and it will turn into a concertina journal. So there's lots of YouTube videos. I'm not going to show you how to make a paper art journal, but I am going to share how I tend to be quite prolific, because this is just a super fun exercise that you can do without thinking, just grabbing a color. I chose this really vibrant, brilliant yellow-green because it would show up on my dark background. But if you have a fairly light background, you just want to be focusing maybe some brights, some neons. And I'm not overthinking it, I'm just getting that mark down and trying to get some texture. So I am leaving some of that elevated texture, which I really like. And I'm gonna now switch. I get bored easily, switch to another color. A similar color, I'm gonna switch to aqua green, which is another gorgeous green. I don't know if we swatched that one, did we? We can actually swatch it right now, just by, oh, and mixing those two is very pretty. There we go. So we've swatched it. So aqua green by artist Loft, the very affordable Michael's in-house brand. And so right now I'm working on 140-pound Canson mixed media, aka watercolor paper, which I had done an acrylic ink background that just didn't amount to anything. It was just experimental at the time, but it's a beautiful, beautiful underpainting background to add this acrylic paint. Because it was originally in acrylic inks, you can see it's smooth, and adding the texture is really appealing. I might open my window. I do recommend always working in a well-ventilated space, because if you're like me and you're sensitive to chemicals and paints, don't want to get a headache, you don't want your eyes burning, I would recommend just, you know, if you can work in a bigger space. If you're in your home, like I am, opening a window or two to get sort of a cross flow. So I'm just gonna open a window. And open this other window here. And then I'm gonna open a different color. I'm gonna open this turquoise. And just see how that color shows up next to the other colors. And I'm using my 3/4 inch brush, and I'm getting a lot of texture down on the paper. You know, what would be smart would be to stop before it gets too much paint, too tightly woven together, because it will be harder for me to fold up into a journal, but definitely not impossible, just trickier. Don't forget about the edges. So adding paint to the edges. And what we're doing is I'm just adding a lot of bright greens, creating an underpainting for what will then maybe be an option for a later painting. And just a way of using up, maybe you have a lot of acrylic paints and you just want to do a beautiful abstract piece. If you start painting and you're enjoying what you're doing, keep doing those same marks. Repeat colors that you love. I love that deep, deep underlayer of the purple blue. And then again, adding more of a neutral green on top and just seeing what I get. The one thing I know that I want to add, which sometimes is missing at the end, is white or some really lights. And so one thing I can do is add yellow. I'm going to add this Lemon Yellow by Reeves. This is an old paint tube, and it's a very, very bright, beautiful yellow. And you can see it's old because the binder has kind of gotten how do you say, a bit grainy. It's not fully mixed, it's kind of settled, so I'm not getting quite the effect I like, but we'll just use some of it up. Still interesting. And it's better than just drying up entirely and me not being able to use this paint. So it's gonna stay on my painting as an underlayer instead of in the garbage or in a landfill. This year I've really been focusing on what am I using most with my art supplies. Now that I've kind of found my style, my watercolor art poetry style, I'm still loving acrylics, but I know that if I'm using up certain acrylic paints, I don't think I'll go out and buy more. I'm just gonna try and invest in watercolor supplies that I love. Okay, and then without cleaning my brush, I would use white now, and a very affordable white is actually gesso, which is what a lot of artists use to prime their canvas. So I use it sometimes if I don't have a white handy. It does have a little bit more of a smell, but I'm just gonna put it right on my brush and just get some of that green into that white gesso. And you can see I work quite quickly. I don't really overthink it. If I have too much paint in an area, I just kind of try and scoop it and move it around. But I do want lighter areas for the underpainting of what I'm gonna finish the painting as, which is an abstract still life. And the more marks that I have on my paper, the more texture, the more colors that I love, the more I have to work with. So when I'm trying to sort of solve the painting towards the end, this has given me a beautiful start. It's almost like I'm just looking at like colorful fireworks, confetti, little bits of textured beauty. And in the process, I'm learning, for instance, you know, do I like the size of this brush? Do I like working with acrylic paint? Do I find the gesso? This is a really good Liquetex gesso. Do I find it gives me a headache? Do I like it just as well as my other tube of paint? And I like to work fast because of the component of, you know, getting headaches from certain paints. I want to try and not expose myself for, you know, a long time. I don't like to take a ton of time when I paint because I get too in my head. So this keeps me, this process is just so fun. And already this has turned into a beautiful background, and we're just basically smushing paint. I really want to go to my Venetian Rose by Amsterdam acrylic and just mix up that, whoops, get out that beautiful pink and just see how it mixes. And I'm actually trying not to mix in this pink because I like the vibrancy of it, and I right now I'm feeling it's not quite as bright as I want, so I'm gonna be bold and go to my Luminous Opera by Holbein. This is a very bright neon type paint. And without cleaning my brush, I'm gonna leave some of that Venetian Rose and just see what I get. And I'm gonna go over some of the areas that were white with the gesso because I like the lighter pink. And I'm kind of sometimes going over the area a couple times, so I put down the paint. If I put down too much, I go back over it. So like right here, for instance, now it's becoming like a lighter white. And I'm kind of like, you know, if you've been painting a while and you know what colors you love together, you can be strategic and, you know, think, okay, in this darker purple background area, I love the neon paint that's not diluted down with the white gesso. Or, you know, I want to go back to maybe a brighter, more orangey yellow to go over that background. So let's just try this Holbein luminous line, the luminous orange. And I just think that's so pretty. And I am using a lot of paint. I know this is going to take quite a while to dry, but the fun thing is you can just know that go back to this, you know, in a couple days, and you can go over it with more layers. You can cover over areas that maybe you don't like the color, add more, say, of colors that you really loved, and say they dried a lot lighter than you thought, which acrylic paint often dries darker than you think. Maybe the way you turn your brush, you start to enjoy that motion. So it's just sort of like learning about yourself as an artist. Are you enjoying the process, or are you kind of in a place where you might, you know, maybe you have a history of wanting things to be a certain way, controlled, more of a, I don't like to use the word perfect, but for those of us that might have a tendency towards wanting something to be what we think is perfect, this is just a great practice to, you know, there's a blob, a circular blob of gesso there, but I don't care, it looks really great. And so I'm going to go back to, again, this is Reeves Deep Yellow, another paint color I want to use up, but I just want to see, oh yeah, it's actually, it's kind of like that luminous color, but more, how do I say, more muted. I'm not loving it because it's close, but maybe dials down the vibrancy of the luminous. So I'm not going to use any more of this, and I'm going to step back and think, okay, I still feel like I could use some more gesso, some more lights, and so I'm just going to go right over top of my brush and get a little of the white, and smushing it down. And I'm really trying to get that 3/4 inch size, give or take. And it's a nice enough day. I could actually, it might be a bit too cold. I think it's about 6 or 8 degrees Celsius. I could probably let it dry outside, but I'm not sure, to be honest, how that works with, I'm used to letting things dry out in the summertime, but it might crack. I don't know if it's cold temperature. If any of you know, you can leave a comment. I've never really gotten into hair dryers to quick things up, to speed things up, to quick things up. And so I'm losing myself in this process, and this is so pretty. So I think I'll probably finish up on this one and just set it aside and let it dry. But this is a great start for, let me put my paintbrush there. This is just a great start of some art, and to be able to revisit this at a later date. So you can just see the texture I'm getting, and when I tilt it, just how chunky I've left some of the paint. So if you have the luxury of time, actually that is a little bit too chunky. I think it's probably gonna crack off if it goes on a canvas. So I'm just gonna swirl and get off some of that paint off my brush on the edges. Sometimes the edges, if I mount this to wood panel later, aka glue it to wood panel, the edges you don't see as much. So I'm just gonna move this and work on the other one. Okay, so I've moved that, and I just want to share with you what I should have shared at the beginning of the video, but that's just not how I do my unedited videos. Here is a dried background, very different color scheme. I used a lot more of like a Payne's gray, navy, royal blue, cerulean blue, and then the bright neon orange, and that Venetian rose, the pink. And this I actually tore off the top. So this was 18 by 24. It was a painting I had done on paper I didn't care for, so I painted over it, and I had made it into a journal. So this, you can see the fold lines, much easier to fold if you do the folds initially before getting down the paint, because the paint is plastic, right? And so when you're trying to fold thick plastic without having it crack, it can be tricky. So here's another one. You can see I used an iridescent greenish yellow. I'm really in love with this one. I don't know how the colors are today, but beautiful, beautiful bright pinks, oranges, yellows. And the only pop of green was an iridescent green, and I think it might have been this one, iridescent green by Pebeo. Oh, and I can't get the lid off. Okay, that's tricky. Some of my lids are pretty tight. And then this one I had finished again. There was a painting underneath, a practice piece in blue acrylic ink. You can just see a lot of that dark blue. But I add some lights, and now this is just the perfect underlayer. There I used the word perfect. This is an imperfect but perfect opportunity for painting over top of this and just carving out colors you love. It's sort of like reductionistic painting. I'm not going to get into that today, but I did want to just share my process of letting go, building up this gorgeous confetti type firework layer of beautiful neons and brights. My recommendation is, if you are thinking about, you know, doing some little mini paintings like I have, I'm just going to take off my gloves now. I have just some recommendations, and I can maybe do this on video sometime, but whatever you want your painting to end up as, just remembering that rule of thirds. If you divide your painting into thirds, if you have a focal point here or here, here or here. So in this painting, my focal point is this beautiful dried flower up in the upper left third. So thinking about when you know, say this is the composition, or sorry, this is the underpainting, this little cut up piece of paper. And, you know, if this was a panel, you would want to divide this into thirds. And so I'm gonna grab my Neocolor Caran d'Ache crayon. Okay, so you could use, I could use chalk to do a demo. This is a Neocolor 2, so it's a water-soluble crayon, so this comes off. But if you divide your canvas or your paper into thirds, whoops, I don't think you'll be able to see the lines, but I'm gonna circle. These are the areas that you would want to have your brightest colors, or an area that you feel like would be really interesting. Maybe you want to add a little bit of collage under here. If you end up with a painting where you've kind of carved around the image and you don't really see anything you want to highlight in the third quadrant, you can add something. So I really did like this quadrant, so I've left this alone. Although I feel like I needed to add that beautiful flower in this area. So another example here, I did actually put that flower in the upper third, and yeah, you can just see if I had divided it, I could have chosen to have a focal point here down here or here. And so just to remember, you know, when you're creating these wild backgrounds and when you get ready to have your composition, thinking about the rule of thirds can help just in terms of what's appealing to the eye. But this is your art. Everybody is different, right? I'm going to, I'm just going to actually remove that water-soluble crayon, that Neocolor 2. So just like chalk, if I had a piece of chalk, just that you would see if you're, you know, back in school, elementary school, we used to use, have chalkboards. You could use, especially on here, a white piece of chalk would really show up. You can, you know, draw an image, say of a heart, and carve around it with paint. You could use, so this particular, again, water-soluble crayon would just really show up nicely. So because you can easily wipe this off, if this was white chalk, it's just so beautiful to be able to say, you know what, I really like my heart in this place, or I don't care for my heart in this place. So because the acrylic paint is dry underneath, I can just take that right off. Maybe, you know, you want to add, say, a flower in this area here. You can kind of loosely draw in where you might add it, and then think about if you painted around that, would it pop enough? Do you like the flower? Do you like the shape? It's just a one way that I use to explore composition. But you know, of course, if you're painting just for fun, that doesn't matter at all. And the process I wanted to share with you today was just this fun process of grabbing a big sheet of paper. And for me, I'm so prolific, but I do have a lot of practice pieces. There's so much beauty about working on paper, but I had all of these kind of partially started paintings, practice pieces on high quality paper, fairly high quality, and I just didn't want to pass it off as unfinished. I wanted to find a purpose for the paper, so using it as an underlayer. And just, you know, what a great project. I think when I start my class this November, I think it would be really cool to just have a couple big sheets of paper in the middle. And when people come in and they're getting settled, trying to set up their easels or, you know, their spots, just leaving some paintbrushes out and having them put down colors that they like in kind of that same motion that we were doing. And when it dries, being able to kind of fold this up, and each person can then have their own little painting to work on. That I think will buy me a bit of time, because we're going to be working on, each of us is going to work on either a canvas, wood panel, or paper, and we're going to work on 4 at a time. So it'll be interesting just to see how this class goes, because you know, it's just so different. These unedited YouTube videos are very different than having a class and considering drying time and having lots of different people with, it's just very different. So I'm super excited about it, but I just wanted to share with you a really relaxed way of getting down colors and textures. And, you know, I had really never worked much with this 3/4 inch, this one's a bit longer, but this 3/4 inch brush. This was a brush, you can barely see it, by Derwent. And I think I had purchased a pack of these Derwent paintbrushes, but this is the one that I use the most. And I just have to clean off that paint here because it's before it's drying on here. This is how I also start another painting, is by cleaning my brushes. You discover, you know, beautiful colors, the way you have energy by getting that color down, just trying to get out, you know, if I'm in a rush, I know I have to say pick up my son from school. I just want to have a sheet of paper that can be nearby. So I'm gonna grab another one, and just getting out that paint as best as I can. You can see you can get transparency in acrylic paints, You can thin them out with water or with an acrylic medium. But sometimes you don't realize how much paint is actually still in your brush until you want to clean it. And so I feel like, is there anything else I want to share? I think this has been a great long video. We're at the 46-minute mark just about, and I had already done a video that kind of goes with this, with getting down those warm colors, the pinks, the reds, the oranges, and sharing a little bit more about this project, this class coming up. So I will link both classes in my video description, and I hope this inspired you though, just to get out paper. And you know, even if you didn't have a big sheet of paper, but you wanted to say, you know, find a brush you haven't used in a while, get some paints that may be sitting around, acrylic paints in particular, and just getting color down and being mindful, trying not to get the color so close to the other while it's wet. You don't want to mix the colors. So that's the one key with this exercise, is to keep the colors somewhat pure, because when you get to the point where you want to really paint the painting and zero in on certain colors, you just don't want to have more of like mud color that's been created from the colors too closely mixing. So you can always lighten things up by adding white into the color, or gesso towards the end, a beautiful white, because it's easier to kind of look at the end and see if you have both lights and more mediums and darks. And that's all I want to say. I will leave you with this little painting that I have started on wood panel by using this background technique. And again, adding wildflowers. I'm going to add some Posca pen details, acrylic paint pen, Neocolor Caran d'Ache. You can see this beautiful botanical, this real little botanical flower there. But I'm going to leave you with that, and again share that this is paper mounted to a cradled wood panel. So when you have a work on paper, you know, think about Christmas ornaments. You know, do you have little wood panels that you could have this background, get it glued to the ornament, and then you have the beauty of being able to do an image on top, to carve around an image. It's just super fun. Even just your favorite colors and maybe a really nice word that would show up in a different paint pen, that would be a lovely Christmas ornament. So possibilities of art, and as a creative, they really are endless, and they're my greatest joys. So thank you for watching, and we will see you all soon.